Hey YouTube, I wanted to do a quick video to see if there was any interest in further exploring my African cichlid freshwater aquarium setup, discussing all the species I've got and my hardware configuration for this aquarium. I built this system on the cheap. I got the tank used. There's a few blemishes here and there, but overall the design was good. I had a lot of fun picking out the species for kind of maximum compatibility. All the species in this tank come from the three Eastern African lakes. I think the majority of them come from Lake Malawi, although I think I have one or two from Lake Tanganyika. I'll try to add more details in the description below. If anybody's got questions about specific fish species here, I'll try to go over some of the more uncommon ones that will most likely be the popular requests here. But before I get into the specific species of fish that I picked out for this setup here, what I would like to do is just kind of show you the hardware setup. We've got about 27 or 28 mbunas in here and a couple of haps, just a few haps. Most of them are mbunas. So I'm going to zoom out for just a quick minute and get you a glance at the whole aquarium here. There's no canopy on it. It's just glass top. We do have a net in the top where we've separated out two male giraffe cichlids, the venastus, because they were fighting. When you buy them small, you can't quite tell if they're male or female, and you got to wait a little bit before you can tell. But we had first originally gotten one premium venastus male and two females to go with them. And just so you know which fish I'm talking about, the giraffe cichlids are pretty common in the fish trade. And behind the red looking guy there, that's the male venastus here. He's been fighting a little bit, so you can see his fins have gotten a little chewed there, and he's not colored up right now until he gets to feeling better. So we had another male just like him, and he's quarantined up in here right now so that we can find him a place where he can get a tank of his own. He looks like a female, but he's just not showing his colors because the other larger male is present. So his head shows a lot of blue if the other larger male venastus here isn't harassing him. So, and again, I just want to kind of zoom out and show you the setup here. This is a 110-gallon Oceanic aquarium. Now, I understand Oceanic has kind of stopped making these kinds of aquariums here. This was probably more of a display tank. And I'm not sure what their current offerings are. People that have been in the fish trade more consistently and the hobby fish keeping more consistently than I have could probably answer that a little bit better. But I understand that there have been some changes to what Oceanic's offerings are in more recent times. So a couple of things I did with this setup is I backed the back glass with vinyl. That was kind of a self-install there. So I actually put a layer, it's kind of shiny, you can kind of see it there looking at the edge. So I put black vinyl on the back of the aquarium, that way I didn't have to paint it. And so the whole background shows black there. We've got pool filter sand. I was a little disappointed with the tan coloration of the pool filter sand. When I had bought that in the past, it was kind of a more gypsum looking white sand, which I thought looked really well with the black background of the aquarium. Apologies for the glass. I should clean that before the next video there. All the rock you're seeing in there is real. That's Texas Holy Limestone. When there's not a lot of algae on it, it looks brilliant white. Some of that green algae is a bit hard to fight back. We've been testing and closely monitoring water conditions, but what it comes down to is the light we purchased right here, a Satellite Plus Pro from Current USA, is kind of meant for planted aquariums. And really that wasn't the wisest decision if we didn't want algae growth in the aquarium, because we're definitely pumping a lot of the wavelengths of light into this aquarium that algae loves, and it's kind of just on steroids. The stuff's growing really well. To really get rid of that algae, instead of scrubbing it by hand, I'd probably have to pull all the rock out and power wash it and then do some soaks on the rock to make sure that it was safe to put back into the aquarium. So for now, I just leave the algae on the rocks. It does look a lot cooler when the rocks are bright white, kind of like they look like skulls a bit. It's very interesting looking contrast, especially to the black background. Now you're seeing a lot of particles float around in the water there. We do have the tank a little crowded, but we have a lot of filtration on this tank. I'm going to get into that next. So up at the top here, you see 4 over-the-back tubes coming in on a saddle plastic that came with the filters. You might have guessed already, but there's 2 intakes, and then there's 2 outflows. The outflows are directed so that the water isn't terribly turbulent. Only the haps would get upset by the turbulent water up towards the top, because the haps we have are open water haps. However, we have decided to point those nozzles in such a way so that the water turbulence is somewhat reduced. We do have some air stones in the back of there, but again, we have 2 intakes. Those are in the middle. The 2 outtakes, or sorry, the outflows are towards the side of the tanks. So the water circulation in the tank is pretty good. Probably use some improvement, but I want to show you the filtration setup we got going on here. Okay, so what I've done is I have installed 2 Fluval FX6, one on each side. And you can get some great deals on these FX6 canister filters. They are super easy to maintain. You know, it's really easy to use the quick disconnects and shut off valves right here, or sorry, quick disconnect there, shut off valve there. You want to do the shut off, then the quick disconnect if you're maintaining these for yourself. But they're very easy to pull out, clean, maintain. I try not to do that until it's absolutely necessary so that I don't disturb the bacteria that takes longer to develop, the nitrate, the anoxic bacteria that takes quite a bit longer to grow and only likes to really grow well in areas where there's limited amount of oxygen in the water. And so anytime you open up these canister filters and you clean all the media and you clean out and replace the mechanical filtration, you run the risk of reducing the amount of anoxic, or sometimes also called or referred to as anaerobic bacteria. So inside of this aquarium stand from Oceanic, the stand came with the aquarium. I bought it used, and so inside of there we have 2 FX6s. Now I also got this modular mesh-like. So basically, these are outdoor, what do they call that stuff? It's like an outdoor tile. It's like a patio tile that clicks together. They come in 1-foot squares. But the advantage of using that stuff is that if any water gets up under here, spilled on the aquarium or stuff, it puts a separation between your aquarium and the floor you have this on. And if the dimensions work out well for you, it's not that much of an eyesore, but it prevents any kind of water moisture from building up under the aquarium if you have any spills when you're doing water changes, cleaning the tank, or rearranging the rock and that sort of thing. So using this deck mat, there's a couple of brand names for the stuff. I'll include links in the description below. I don't make any money off those, but for your convenience, I'll put the links to this material that I bought on Amazon, and I got it in the gray color here, so that way it would, you know, as closely as possible match the color of the aquarium. And I'll take a long shot here in a minute and show you it doesn't look all that bad. So in here, one thing I've done, and it got a little disturbed, but I put my my air pump on top of just a piece of filter floss, because it kind of cuts down on the vibration noise a little bit when you have that on top of there. And another thing I've done that I wanted to share with everybody, actually it was the main thing that got me wanting to make this video, is that if you look in the tank, you're going to notice there's no in the tank heaters. You're not going to see a heater inside of the tank here. All you're really going to see is the outflows, the intakes, and then a little temperature sensing line there on the second farthest from me intake, because I have done inline water heaters. So the inline water heaters might be a little bit hard to see, but I'll also include a link in the description below. I did have to do some adaptation work with some hose clamps and some couplers that went from 5/8 to 3/4 to match up to those inline heaters. But I was able to basically take a heater. This is the return flow, or the outflow from the filter here, and so this kind of loops around and then it goes back up through a heater, an inline heater. So these inline heaters are really neat. What they allow you to do is basically not have to put one of those heaters inside your tank. So you can have the heat being performed on your water flow as it's returning back into the tank. And I've noticed the temperature stays very stable. You know, it's got a purposeful margin on there, that way the heaters aren't always running, but when it drops below the lower limit, the heaters on both of the outflows, I actually did 2 heaters for redundancy, because I don't want to go on a trip or vacation or not be watching this thing very closely. If one of the heaters fail, I don't want the water temperature to drop too low and make the fish sick or kill them, especially if we're away from the house for a long time and we're only really having somebody feed the fish or something like that. So I did some redundancy on that. I've got redundancy on the filters. We've got 2. Some would probably argue that that's overkill for this type of setup. With 110 gallons, I've got 2 FX6s, but with as many fish as we have in there, you know, the extra filtration doesn't hurt. So I 3D printed a bracket to angle out the receiver and the display for the current USA Satellite Pro light fixture, and then I 3D printed a basket on the door here just to hold that remote, so that when you open the door, you can grab your remote and adjust the light. Now, I would not recommend this light for an African cichlid setup. It's really geared towards planted aquariums, so I would probably recommend for, you know, getting weather effects and programmable lights that you can put a 24-hour cycle on and all that. I would really just recommend going with the Fluval Aqua Sky. I think it's the 2.0 is the latest revision. That thing's really cool. So in hindsight, I wouldn't go back and do the same light setup that I did before. So now that you've seen the hardware setup and you know how the heaters, the air pump, and the canister filters are set up there, and the controllers for the light, I just wanted to talk about one of the species in particular. This is the Pseudotropheus icala. Some people refer to these as the bumblebee cichlid, but I do think there's a difference between these and the bumblebee cichlid. They look somewhat similar, but they are not. And so those fish there are really neat. And then you've got the, these are the Fulborni, Labiotrophus fulborni. And the Labiotrophus fulborni, the females are often the ones that are orange blotch variant like this, but you can get the males. Those are called marmalade cats in the hobby fish industry, and those are a very beautiful and interesting looking fish. So if you guys got some questions for me, or if there's any interest in continuing on with any more videos for the fish hobby stuff, I'd be happy to answer any questions or do any follow-on videos just to see if there's any interest in out there. And I know my channel is highly varied. You never know what I'm going to upload next. I'm always doing a new hobby. I've done everything from CNC work to 3D printing to fish keeping to programming to electronics, you name it. But I'd be happy to put out any more videos or answer any questions that you might have about hobby fish keeping in general, African cichlids, or more information on the species or the hardware setup here for the aquarium. All right, YouTube, have a great day. Thank you for watching my video. Feel free to subscribe or drop a comment below. Have a good one. Bye-bye.